Is Tech actually dead? The Bad Batch Season 2 finale definitely made it seem that way, with Tech sacrificing himself and falling to his death, but this is Star Wars, and if we don't see a body, who knows what will happen. Like Luke Skywalker says, no one's ever really gone. So I want to talk about my theories on what may have become of Tech after carrying out Plan 99 in the Bad Batch Season 2 finale. Before we get into it, welcome back to my channel. My name is Scotty Holiday. I'm a queer creator and a huge Star Wars nerd, so if you're into either one of those things, please consider liking, subscribing, and following me on social media at Scotty Holiday SW for all my latest Star Wars content. Now, we all know Tech is the brains of the Bad Batch, so I'm sure he weighed the risks and possible outcomes of his sacrifice before committing, and like any trained soldier, I'm sure he braced himself for impact. But there's no telling how far his fall was and if there was even a possibility of him surviving at all. There was also that giant empty rail car falling with him that he could have climbed onto, or it could have crushed him once it hit the ground. We don't know. What we do know is that the Imperials investigated the wreckage since Dr. Hemlock had Tech's goggles, returning them to Hunter as a gift on Ord Mantell. And with all his cloning research and experimentation, I just know he would have wanted Tech's body recovered. The first option that comes to mind for Tech's fate is using him as a template or even prototype for the Death Trooper. Now, Death Troopers have been around in the Star Wars timeline since before 5 BBY, and knowing all the research and experimentation the Empire was investing in, it's likely they could have started on the idea of what would become the Death Trooper as early as 18 BBY when the Bad Batch Season 2 takes place. Death Troopers are an elite stormtrooper variant that specializes in stealth, espionage, and lethality, utilized as protective detail for significant Imperial officers, as well as special assignment commandos for Imperial intelligence. Along with their unique black armor, their helmets were equipped with advanced sensors and targeting systems of combat areas, enemies, and allies. Death Troopers were also surgically enhanced to improve their physical and mental attributes, such as strength, speed, agility, reflexes, and stamina. Candidates were even required to meet rigid physical standards like height and weight, as well as ideological standards. Now, right away, between their surgical enhancements and advanced helmet system, the parallels to the Bad Batch and Tech specifically are undeniable. Tech's build is also a lot leaner than his brothers and standard clones, which could have been taken into account for setting the Death Trooper standards as well. The Bad Batch Season 2 already introduced us to the Imperial clone assassins, which to me seemed like a precursor of the Death Trooper, so the connection is definitely there. The second option for Tech's fate is using him for research and experimentation of the Dark Trooper program. According to canon, the original Dark Trooper took aging clones and replaced over 70% of their body with mechanical components, but Legends explored this even further, taking the aging veteran clones and returning them to peak condition by replacing their limbs and organs with cybernetics, utilizing the same tech used on Darth Vader. The clones selected for the Dark Trooper program were also forcibly recruited, and many couldn't cope with having their autonomy stripped away, ultimately resorting to suicide. This option is definitely a lot darker than a Death Trooper fate, but it would make a lot of sense since Tech would have likely sustained grievous injuries from his fall, and the only way to keep him alive would have been to replace any broken limbs or organs with cybernetics, which again is very similar to Vader's fate. We all know that by the time of the Bad Batch Season 2, clones were already being imprisoned and taken to Mount Tantus for experimentation. Dr. Hemlock even explains to Tarkin that he's found a new purpose for the clone troopers being decommissioned, and I can only imagine it's for something sinister. Hemlock sees the clones not as people, but property of the Empire, explaining that their cooperation to be used in his experiments is not required. So with Tech's heightened intellect and necessity of cybernetic enhancements for survival, he would make the perfect test subject to lead into the creation of the Dark Trooper. We don't have an exact date in canon when the Dark Trooper program began, but by the time of the Galactic Civil War, they were already onto a Phase 2 design. Legends continuity says they were created years before the Battle of Yavin, or 0 BBY, and with how heavily the entire Mount Tantus operation is pulling from Legends, along with the Empire's unlimited resources for projects and experimentation, Dark Trooper research is not out of the question in the timeline that the Bad Batch series takes place. As for our third and final option for Tech's fate, Tech could receive a similar fate to Echo as seen in the Clone Wars Season 7. After recovering Tech's body and replacing any broken limbs or organs with cybernetics, I could totally see the Empire keeping him in stasis, unable to regain his consciousness, using his mind connected with their computer systems for counterintelligence, predicting clone battle plans, strategies, and algorithms, or he may just ultimately be dead in the end, and this honestly feels like the least heartbreaking option out of all the possibilities I mentioned in this video, and that's saying something. As much as I love Tech, at this point I do think he needs to remain dead, but it's always fun to theorize and speculate day, and that's the fun of being a Star Wars fan. So which of my theories do you think is the most likely? Do you think Tech survived his fall, or will his sacrifice be the end of his story? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, or join my Discord to continue the conversation there. Make sure to like, subscribe, and consider following me on social media at Scotty Holiday SW for all my latest Star Wars content. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, may the Force be with you.